Hi there, it's Lerald, and today I'm going to talk about Guardian Druids in Dragonflight. I am looking at beta content at level 70 just to be clear. I mainly want to talk about the talents and how Bear Druid plays. I was working on this video earlier today and saw some news that Blizzard had made a bunch of changes to the Guardian Druid talent tree. This got me very excited because it seemed like they were mostly shuffling talents around and fixing some issues with pathing, and those were my main concerns with Druids and Dragonflight. The tree had really bad pathing and bad talent placement. Just to get to the most pressing question right off the top here, were today's changes good? No. Blizzard accidentally nerfed Bear Druid. I hope it was accidental anyways. This was a class that was already set up to be the weakest tank in Dragonflight, and they have made it weaker. I still think that the tree is fixable just by reconfiguring some of the placement of talents, but what they have done today is not the right approach. They literally made the class worse, and I will go over how in just a minute here. I've been working on some talent builds that are pretty different from the ones I had used prior to today, and I think there are some options that work out all right, but basically, whoopsie, they made a mistake. Now let's just take a look at the tree and go over things and see how they're different at level 70 in Dragonflight as opposed to how they are right now in the pre-patch. And then also cover what changed today. Now obviously at level 70 we're able to get 5 more points in each of the 2 trees. So I'll just start with that difference. This is the tree that I've been running for the most part at level 70 over here on the class side. And level 60 rather. And what I'll basically be doing with my points, I think most of the time, is just putting them in here, getting that 1 extra point in Nurturing Instinct, taking Matted Fur, which isn't really that great of a talent, and coming down here to get Well-Honed Instincts, which is a pretty nice defensive cooldown. You do have the option of coming down to the other direction, foregoing this personal defensive cooldown and this bit of crowd control, and taking Mass Entanglement, Innervate, and Nature's Vigil. However, there is one issue here, and that's Innervate forces you to shift out of bear form when you cast it, which is a pretty big problem. I like the concept of being able to take Innervate. I certainly like being able to give a mana cooldown to my healers when they need it, but the problem is that they may need it at a moment's notice, and if it's a situation where I have to shift out of bear form while I'm tanking, that's not happening. If they fix it so that you're able to cast this while you're in bear form and stay in bear form, then I think this is pretty valuable utility. Otherwise, not so much. Nature's Vigil is a 30-second cooldown that heals 1 nearby friendly target for 20% of all the single target damage you deal. Now this counts your dots like Thrash dot. It counts Moonfire dots. It counts all of your single target damage like auto attacks and Moonfire hits and Mangle and so on. It basically just means all of your damage except for Thrash and Swipe will heal for 20%, which is okay. It's an interesting idea for tanks to be able to have a pseudo raid healing cooldown, but given that Bear Druid damage isn't that high, it's not really amazing. It's certainly not going to be like blowing anybody's mind. I think generally speaking, you're going to be better off coming over here and getting yourself just more defensive cooldowns. Now let's take a look over here at the class tree, and this is where things have been changed. Like over here on this left side, things are pretty much all the same. The only real change in going into Dragonflight is just that you get more points to play around. On the right side, you have this new pathway that cuts through here from Improved Survival Instincts, which it's nice to have a little bit better pathing here, but ultimately it's leading into a talent that's not very good. Tooth and Claw has for some reason been expanded into a 2-point talent, and I think this is a mistake because it doesn't seem to do anything extra when you put the 2nd point in, but if this is intended, you'll probably never ever take this pair of talents, Vulnerable Flesh and Tooth and Claw. Pretty much worthless to go this route. Again, elsewhere we have some other of these talents that previously didn't pass through, like Vicious Cycle, Front of the Pack, and the talent that used to be here. They all path down. Now, for the most part, these talents aren't very good. Infected Wound, 50% single target slow, that's not really very useful. Getting more maul damage if you mangle and mangle damage if you maul, not really very useful. Front of the pack giving you 5% more movement speed all the time might actually be more useful than reinforced fur, considering this is like less than 1% more damage reduction and against physical damage only. But, you know, it's a very minor defensive increase versus 5% move speed. Kind of a couple of bad options. The bulk of the changes happened down here in this bottom section of the tree. The part that, you know, if I take this point out, the bottom 3 rows, essentially. What they've done is they've taken what used to be these sort of 2 branching paths where you have like one fixed node on one side and a choice node on the other, and they split the choice nodes out so that you can take both of them at a time. This sounds good, but the problem is that, like, these choice nodes weren't great. Dream of Cenarius and Ursoc's Fury were together, if I remember correctly, and Dream of Cenarius is really annoying to use and really bad. Getting to cast a regrowth every 20 seconds? Who cares? It's just not that great. In the other side of the tree, they've moved After the Wild and Guardian of Elune up here, along with Survival of the Fittest and Soul of the Forest. All of 3 of these nodes that used to be down here have swapped place with these 3 nodes, Scintillating Moonlight, Galactic Guardian, and Twin Moonfire, which all were obviously up here. These 3 nodes are like core components of the class. They're real like linchpins of the way that you play Druid right now in the pre-patch, and they were going to be in Dragonflight as well. Moving them down here basically makes it so that you're not able to come over and get these talents that you would want over here on the left side and then still pick up all of these. This is a real problem. It really, even more than ever before, limits your ability to path through this tree. These talents over here on the right side, Gory Fur, is a pretty minor rage cost reduction, of 15% chance to reduce 1 Iron Fur by 25%. That's like every 8th mangle gives you 10 extra rage. That really doesn't add up to very much. That's about 1 1/4 more rage per mangle compared to Soul of the Forest down here, which really isn't even a great talent either, giving you 5 and 25% more damage. You know, this isn't really that great, and it's 4 times stronger than this, which you have to take to be able to path into these talents over here that really aren't even that impactful. Like, it's just a very frustrating situation in terms of potential pathing. Rend and Tear is one of the favorite talents of Druids. I mean, it's 6% more damage, it's 6% more damage reduction. What's, you know, everybody loves that, you know, why wouldn't you take this? The problem is that getting there takes 2 points in reinvigoration. Just like getting over here to these Moonfire talents takes 2 points in Scintillating Moonlight. This really limits your ability to get deeper into either of the trees or any of these paths down here. You know, Ursoc's Guidance, the Incarnation cooldown reduction, it's not a massive amount, it's about 40 seconds, but 40 seconds off of a major cooldown is not bad. I'd love to have that. But I can't get that and Rend and Tear and still get Galactic Guardian, which is a huge source of rage and damage, a huge rotation fixing component of the class. Instead of struggling and scrapping to get these talents in the bottom left-hand side and giving up this really valuable utility like this cooldown reduction on Incarn, Circle of Life and Death, Twin Moonfire, and so on, I've decided to kind of lean into it and play with a build that takes everything over here on the right-hand side. You get a lot more rage generation than you had before out of Soul of the Forest and Blood Frenzy, giving you, you know, more rage gen out of your main skills. You get to keep Galactic Guardian and Twin Moonfire. You get all the same spell damage and damage that you did before, other than losing Rend and Tear. This is a 6%, basically a 6% flat damage taken increase to how it was before. So I don't really love it. But the reality is that the post-nerf version of Ursoc's Fury that we've been playing with in the beta sucks. It's just not good. The version of it in Shadowlands was 75% of your damage was given to you as a shield. Now it's 30% of your damage from Thrash. They added in Maul, but with today's set of changes to Vulnerable Flesh and Tooth and Claw, Maul is worthless again. So this is just bad now. I mean, the idea of a shield that goes through all healing reduction effects is great. The concept is great. The tuning on it leaves a lot to be desired. Reinvigoration is pretty nice. In current gear levels where I have 15%-ish haste, it shaves about 10 seconds off the cooldown of Frenzied Regen, from 32 seconds down to 22. That's pretty nice. I think I'm willing to give that up to have the extra rage generation from Blood Frenzy, and even though I've made some criticisms of it in the past, an extra defensive cooldown in the form of Rage of the Sleeper. I don't really love this build, but I think it is more effective than struggling and scrapping to hang on to what the old build used to be while giving up all these excellent pieces of utility like Ursoc's Guidance, Twin Moonfire, and so on. There is a possible version of this build that could be useful in pure single target where you run Rend and Tear and you take Pulverize and you use that as sort of like just a pure defensive cooldown. This could work in pure single target, losing Twin Moonfire. Okay, I have two questions I want to answer before I wrap up. How does the class play, and is it any good? Let's start with how the class plays. It's fairly similar to how it is in the Shadowlands pre-patch right now. You obviously don't keep the Covenant ability or your Legendary, but those don't have a big impact on your rotation. You hit Mangle, you hit Thrash, you hit Swipe, you hit Moonfire, you use Iron Fur or Frenzied Regen, you probably don't even think about casting Maul now, and you use your defensive cooldowns whenever you need them. You have more group utility now thanks to the class tree, and potentially another defensive cooldown in Rage of the Sleeper, which is nice. But for the most part, the playstyle is pretty unchanged from Shadowlands, except you do like a third the damage that you did in Shadowlands. And on that note, is it good? No. It's pretty disappointing. I think that with today's changes, Bear Druid is gonna be the least played tank in Dragonflight by a pretty sizable margin. I wouldn't blame anyone who doesn't want to play it. It's not unplayable, it's not horrible, but it is a step down from the other tanks in terms of player power, and there's just genuinely no reason to use a Bear Druid over another tank like a Warrior or a Demon Hunter in any situation I can think of. The thing that's so disappointing for me is that today's changes looked like they were addressing the core issues with the class, and they just completely missed the mark. I am hopeful that Blizzard will respond to negative feedback to today's changes and get the class up to the level of other tanks, but the way that they rolled it out today doesn't really inspire a lot of confidence either. I wish I had better news to share here. At least Warrior's still good. For now.